Hello there, and welcome to a new episode of Literature Snacks. Now, this is the first episode of 2021, and we decided to use one of the most beautiful poems ever made in English literature, the Rime of the Ancient Mariner from Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Samuel Taylor Coleridge was born in 1772 in Ottery St Mary, a small town in rural Devonshire. Not finding university stimulating after some travel, he left Cambridge without a degree. He met Wordsworth in 1795, and this encounter changed his life completely. They created a new style of poetry, later called the Romanticism. Coleridge studied the German philosopher Kant, Schelling, and Fichte, and this opened his horizon in matters of philosophy, religion, and aesthetics. Unfortunately, his massive use of laudanum, an opium-based medicine he used it in order to get rid of his headaches, had made him a drug addict and a broken man. But luckily, 16 years later, a good physician managed to help him to control his opium usage, and his lecture of poetry became part of the social calendar for fashionable Londoners. He died in 1834. He has always been charged with heavy accusation of plagiarism from his days up to now. But anyway, his contribution to poetry, style, and ideas is still impossible to deny. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner was written between 1797 and 1800, and it represents the manifesto of English Romanticism. Now, fun fact, the word rhyme in the title is a critique to the imposed style of the time, which was only odes or endecasyllable poems. By reflecting this, the idea that poetry must come from the inside, out of spontaneity. And at the same time, rhymes were also ice crusts that tend to form on ships traveling the Antarctica. In the poem, space, time, and randomness are completely absent, as we are taken in a place that only the inner eye can know. It opens with a group of guests going to a wedding, and the mariner, an old man with a long grey beard, stops a guest, and despite his objection, the mariner starts telling a story. There was a ship. Now, the wedding guest is forced to listen to the story for two reasons. One, because of the strength of the mariner's grip, which is too strong, and because of the mariner's eyes, who are magnetic and glittering like a feral beast. The mariner starts recounting the departure of the ship, throwing the wedding guest and the reader in a timeless place, like a fairy tale. He started describing the harbor with wonderful metaphors. He moves then his narration to a great storm that pushes the ship among the ice. At this point, the ship is trapped into the South Pole. We are brought to a sense of lack of life, but contemporary, there is a sense of sublime with the vast icebergs. Silence and lack of life are broken by the arriving of an albatross. Now, the albatross, for sailors, was one, a symbol of luck, as it was a common belief that albatross carried the souls of dead sailors, so they were there to protect the ship. But at the same time, albatross was also a death omen. Now, the crew feeds the albatross and a warm wind starts to blow that melts the ice and allows the ship to continue its journey. At this point, the mariner shoots the albatross with his crossbow, giving us no indication why he did this. And due to that, two different things happen. First, The ship is surrounded by mist, making the sailing impossible. So at first, the crew blame the sailor for killing the albatross. But then, the mist fades away and the crew attribute this to the death of the albatross and praise the mariner. Unfortunately, after that, the breeze fades away and the ship is blotted in a sea that reminds more of a desert as we read words like hot copper sky and the bloody sun. Now the crew starts to feel tremendously thirsty, and there is a mention of a spirit that has followed them. In order to get rid of the punishment, the crew hangs the albatross at the sailor's neck. After a long time in deprivation, something appears on the horizon. The mariner's throat is so dry that he has to cut himself and suck his own blood in order to speak. Now, the shape coming up to the horizon is a ship that advances inexplicably with no breeze nor tide. And the ship puts herself between the ship of the mariner and the crew and the sun. The ship is a skeleton ship, and upon which there are only two passengers, death and life in death. They are playing dice for the crew. Death wins the crew, and life in death wins the mariner's soul. At this point, the sun sets. The moon rises, and in the moonlight, the crew starts to die one by one, and only the mariner is left alive. All left alone on the ship, the mariner starts to experience a sort of Christian penance. He looks at heaven, but finds himself unable to pray. The first part of his curse is to endure the look of all the dead sailors who don't decay and stare at him for a week. After a week, trapped on the ship in the company of the dead crew, he starts to praise slimy snakes swimming in the sea, and by praising living things, the albatross shifts away from his neck and falls into the sea. He is finally able to sleep, but soon rain arrives. And after the rain, nature and supernatural spirit transform it in a storm that doesn't touch the ship. Now, at this point, all the sailors get up, even if they are dead, and they start working on the ship. Now, the sailors are not zombies, okay? They are animated by a troop of angels, and under their instruction, the ship is sailing home. In the calmness of the South Pole, the mariners hears two spirits. They are called first voice and second voice. He hears these two voices conversating and declaring that since the mariner has killed the albatross that was beloved to the spirits, he will do more penance for it. The ship arrives back home, and the angels leave the crew, and he sees a boat with a hermit on it. He decides that the hermit will be able, as being a man of God, to absolve him from his sins. With the boat approaching, the mariner's ship starts to sink. But he is saved by the pilot of the boat with the hermit. Now, once taken in safe, the mariner asks for forgiveness to the hermit, who asked him to tell the story. Now, at this point, the mariner discovers that out randomly his agony returns, and it will go away only by telling the story. So this is why at the beginning of the story he has grabbed a wedding guest and started telling his story. He leaves the wedding guest with his biggest lesson, as it is much sweeter than a wedding feast is gathering for prayer. The mariner leaves, and the wedding guest won't go to the wedding, as he is left a sadder and a wiser man. From the Mariner's Tale. The idea of sublime is one of the most important ideas in Romantic literature. Sublime is at the same time beautiful and terrifying. It is strictly connected to nature and therefore with the power of God, especially in the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Sublime is an intersection between beauty and horror. Now we see it in the poem through various elements such as the storm that is incredibly powerful and majestic at once, and the glaciers that are incredibly beautiful and at the same time dangerous. Now, according to Coleridge, failing to perceive the sublime can have a terrible effect. First, if approached only with attention for its beauty, we fall victims of its power. If approached only with fear, we miss the idea that all God's creations are inspiring. So we need all our feelings to embrace the sublime. As Coleridge suggests in his poem, sublime has the power to transform humans, as it does with the wedding guest and with the mariner. In the poem, anyway, Coleridge suggested that sublime is also possible to be found in prayers and in the deep connection with God. Now, religion in the Romantic period is a subject of single poet's vision. Romantic poets praise the spontaneity first and places that exist only in our mind, out of the mundane universe. Now, obviously, thinking of this perspective, religions have always provided a good spark for this. But we have had Coleridge who have used religious profoundly in their poem. But we also had romantic authors like Percy Shelley or Wordsworth who didn't use religion at all. So religion is not exactly a part of the romantic elements. It is subjected to the single poet's vision. The Romantic movement developed in response to the Age of Enlightenment in the 18th century. As it promoted reason above anything else, it also contributed to the Industrial Revolution that broke the balance in man and nature relationship. Therefore, Romantics praised emotions over reason and celebrated nature in all its beauty and all its power. The mariner, for example, is in constant proof with nature and its most dangerous power. As we see a violent storm, we have the dangerous sea and also the lack of wind that caused the ship to stop. The mariner's action of killing the albatross can be seen as an attempt of human to master nature and assert human power over nature. But nature is too powerful and too complex for human to understand. In the poem, nature is presented as an expression of a spiritual word. Nature is God's creation, so interacting with nature is interacting with God. Nature alone, therefore, cannot cause the supernatural reaction described in the poem. For example, the completely lack of wind and the dead ship are not part of nature. The mariner sees a breakthrough in his situation when he starts to pray by praising creatures of the sea, which probably he used to despise before this situation that he was into. So in this perspective of praising living thing, Coleridge is omnivore of any kind of religious element. He uses the praising of living creatures as well as angels. So he uses whatever he thinks is best to express his idea of a spiritual by using Catholic elements, but also elements from, for example, the Indian religion of the idea of living creature. The punishment of the mariner is supernatural, as it is a mixture of natural and spiritual. The poem presents the appreciation of nature so spiritual that is more to be considered a religion necessity. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner is considered the Romantic Manifesto because it was the first poem that led the spark that then inspired all the other Romantic poems. Now, Romanticism has been a relative short period of poetry, but personal opinion is probably the best that English literature has ever seen. Unfortunately, in order to create a short video, it was impossible for me to conduct a very good text analysis, which anyway, I would recommend you, and I'm leaving you in the description two links. Okay, the first one is, if you're a metalhead, for example, Iron Maiden has made a song with the whole text of the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. So you can click the first link and play the Iron Maiden song. The text is easily retrievable on internet so that you can follow the text and listen to the Iron Maiden praising the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. If you're less of a metalhead and more of a romantic lover of acting, in the second link, I'm leaving you Sir Ian McKellen reading the Rime of the Ancient Mariner so that you can enjoy his wonderful accent and obviously his wonderful ability of acting a text that is tremendously beautiful. Unfortunately, I really couldn't read it with you on this video, but I strongly recommend you to do it because it's fantastic. So thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please give us a thumb up. We really hope to do many more literature snacks over the 2021. Remember that I am the leader teacher of the school All You Can Learn Arese. This is our email address. This is our Facebook page. This is our Instagram page. We are delivering English, French, Italian for foreigners, Spanish and German courses in presence and online. So you can write to this email and ask for information anytime you want. Thank you very much for being with us and bye bye. See you soon.